Insurance.
Good evening and welcome to the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap. Nice to have you with us, an afternoon drive. Let's go around the horn here just so you can recognize the voices of our panelists in our roundtable discussion here, our brainstorming session. Madam, if you would.
Good evening. This is Mary Stucco with Farm Bureau Insurance.
Scott Farragon with Cartridge World.
Craig Godfrey with Godfrey Weisberg, CPAs and Advisors.
George Volman, Ford in Portland.
Thank you very much. Our special guest is David Bodkin, he was the head of International Public Relations for the Delphi Corporation, lifetime General Motors Public Relations Executive in Japan, Switzerland, and the United States. Let's talk cars for a minute, if you would, George. You don't mind talking cars?
And I have a great question for our guest.
Let her rip.
I mean, because you've been all over the world for General Motors, which one of the auto shows was your most favorite?
That's tough. Probably Paris, Frankfurt. And I'd throw in one down in Melbourne, Australia, but that's just because I love Australia. No, I'd say Paris and Frankfurt. They switch back and forth. Those are probably my two favorites.
Because I remember you like to walk in the Tuileries garden, right?
I'm sorry?
You'd like to walk in the Tuileries, don't you, in the garden?
Oh, the Tuileries, right.
Tuileries. Excuse my French.
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah.
Did you make the auto show circuit too, George?
No. I had that opportunity. I passed. So basically, when I was in the field for General Motors, we obviously had North America, which was headquartered in Detroit. And then they have what they call the B shows, which go, out in the other markets. I mean, not Chicago, not New York. I did the New York Auto Show. That was always Holy Week. Good Friday, we're down at the show.
I see. Literally Holy Week.
At the Javits Center.
Yep.
And then we would have B shows down at, the New Orleans Convention Center when I was down there and so on and so forth. So,
Is General Motors going to make it back?
I'd like to think so. Mm-hmm. And we'll just have to wait and see.
Did you ever in your wildest dreams imagine what happened over the last 3 years with the auto business?
No. I couldn't predict that at all. Mm-hmm. Not at all.
George is a Ford dealer, but he comes from a General Motors background, and I guess you can contrast and compare what happened at General Motors to the way it was approached at Ford. How did Ford get away with being so successful so quickly?
Well, and I don't know if this is accurate, but I'm going to give it a stab. I believe when Alan Mulally was hired by Bill Ford, and he came in and said, this is what we have to do. We need to mortgage everything right now to get us out of this hole. I think the final conversation he had, and don't quote me on this, but this is probably what happened, and we'll appreciate this because this sounds like corporate America. Bill Ford says, you think it'll work? Either I'm going to get shot or I'm going to be a hero. And I think that's probably what came out of Alan Mullally's mouth because he didn't know for sure, and yet it was, and he ended up being the hero.
Quite frankly, Michael, you want them to succeed. I mean, there's no secret. Your listening audience knows how important it is for jobs, for the communities, et cetera. I mean, we go down the whole list. So certainly I want them to succeed.
Who was the most impressive executive that you dealt with at General Motors or Delphi, and what trait did they have that we might learn in small business from?
Well, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you would remember the name, but Bill Hoagland. Mm-hmm. He was fabulous. To your point, he didn't really have a lot of high highs, and he didn't have a lot of low lows. I mean, he was pretty even-tempered, and that didn't mean he couldn't get serious and, kind of get things moving. But what I really loved about his style was he was exceptionally clear of thought. I mean, there was no doubt in meetings or presentations, you knew exactly what he was trying to get across. And also, again, going back to a topic we discussed a little bit earlier, you get to the smaller groups. He was exceptionally genuine. So I guess I'd single him out.
Yeah, and the good news about someone like him is that it came through, and you couldn't fake that. And yet you probably dealt with executives at General Motors and seen others where they did fake it, and you could tell, especially with being trained. And you cannot fake genuine approach.
One other name I'd give you, and he's not in the business anymore, but Rick Wagner. Fabulous gentleman, exceptionally fabulous gentleman. And again, I go back to clear of thought, exceptional demeanor, a great person to work with.
Just got caught up in all of it. Wrong place, wrong time, that kind of thing?
Looks like it. I have no details on that. But yeah.
What about the ones that fail? The ones that weren't so good? What trait did they have that doomed them? Because we'd like to know that, too. to avoid it, of course.
I hate to state the obvious, but, you know, they weren't clear of thought. Too often in meetings went into rants and rages and
Yeah.
things of that ilk. When I say clear of thought, not only verbally, but in written words, instructions, you know, laying out the strategy, or in some cases the tactics, they were all across the board. So at times, the left hand's getting this direction, the right hand was being told X.
So that's something you really should prepare for when you're going to have a staff meeting then, to make sure that your message, just like when you're giving a presentation, is crystal clear and consistent.
Yeah, let me add a small point to that. You know, everyone has the 1 hour staff meeting,
Yeah.
and then it goes to 3 hours. Or everyone has the 1 hour staff meeting, and it should have ended after 20 minutes because we were done with the work. So if anything, is you're going to have your staff meetings and presentations, you might want to allocate an hour or find out how often these things go on. And then to you fellow execs, there better be a purpose why you're having people show up, and there should be some direction when they leave.
And screaming at the staff doesn't work.
By and large, it doesn't.
Okay. Dave Bodkin was with us here for the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap. When we get back, we'll go through some of the day's news. That's in 4 minutes. This evening, it's Michael Patrick Shields, Mid-Michigan Business Wrap. Back this evening with the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap. Here's a marketing idea for you and a breaking story. You'll want to know about this. Budweiser is losing market share. They lost 9% last year and down 9% this year. So what are they going to do to rectify that? They're going to give away free beer. I'm not joking. This is an April Fool's Day. They're going to host the Budweiser National Happy Hour, free brews to customers at trendy bars and eateries, all aimed at the under 30 set later this month. So who would have thought the king of beers was in a
So
little
where
bit of
around
trouble?
Lansing, MPS?
I don't know. We have to go to I guess we go to the Budweiser website or something or figure it out.
Find out, that's right.
The announcement will be coming, and they're going to have a Facebook page too. The big number one, the king of beers. You know, maybe there's a lesson in there for some of us.
Did they say why? Are they losing share to the microbrews, or is it to Miller, or?
It says they've been shedding customers at a ferocious rate. And I think it could be just speculating that there are so many other drink options now with all the different wine coolers and little whiskey drinks and malt beverages and different. There's even alcoholic water, isn't there now? So there's all sorts of
don't think
choices.
I've
I
seen
think
out
there
there.
is. Yeah, it's like some kind of energy drink with alcohol in it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, back to the Craig Godfrey. You had another topic for Dave Bodkin.
Other than IT changes, you know, computer type, or technology changes, what would you say is the largest or the biggest change you saw over your career? And I believe it was 35 years.
Right. I know I will be a little biased because I did spend time out in Asia, but I honestly thought it was GM strategically finding Asia. They were obviously already in North America. They had owned Adam Opel since 1929. It isn't that GM wasn't selling cars in Asia. I mean, they were selling them in Australia and Singapore, but they, in the early 90s, found China. And everyone back then said at some point you need to grab on to China. The Chinese would not let GM in the country until they agreed to build parts first, components first, and then they got the opportunity to start building Buicks and assembly lines. And they also did a truck up in Shenyang. But I guess that to me was the biggest, what I personally think was the biggest strategic change. I'm sure there will be other execs that will talk specifically about particular cars and particular division developments and things of that ilk. But again, that's my bias.
So that we wouldn't export those from the U.S. The plants actually were built over there and then sold. Or the cars were.
Was it a global platform, or was it specifically for the China market?
No, a global platform tweaked to China.
Okay.
I mean, they have their own sets of rules relative to catalytic converters and things of that ilk. But my point is that if you're General Motors and you want to be successful, you're trying to grow your business. And so in order to sell in China, quite frankly, just logistically, you have to build in China.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think in retrospect that move to start building Buicks in China or importing them, or both, actually saved the Buick nameplate in North America?
I sorry, I wouldn't have enough information to comment on that. I really don't.
What was your biggest cultural concern or snafu dealing with Japan and people from all over the world, Switzerland, you name it? What did you have to pay special attention to?
Whether to do a 30-degree bow or a 60-degree bow.
Really?
And make sure you hold your meishi in Japan with 2 hands as you give it out.
That's a business card.
A lot of there weren't really a lot of difficult things to do. I mean, I heard on one of your other programs, Michael, a lady was going through where she lived and all this, and what countries did she like, and I've already said that on this show. But you also asked, well, which countries didn't you like? All told, I've probably been to about 46 countries. Never found one I didn't like. Some easier to get around than others, but you always ran into fabulous people. You always ran into a new culture, and if you were willing to learn, it was just a fabulous experience.
Were you ever in any danger?
Not that I'm aware of. No, seriously. I mean, I made a point of not as tall as I am. I made a point of not going around like the happy American all the time. I mean, there is a certain different cultures do act differently, and so you would like to fit in as best you can. But no, I never thought I was in danger.
If you could transport yourself right this very moment to anywhere in the world for a lunch, where would you go?
Sydney.
Sydney, Australia. That'd be a good lunch, wouldn't it?
Well, and then you and I can catch a Guinness in Ireland after that.
A couple of those big old Foster's oil cans, and we've done it. Well, thank you very much for being with us here.
Michael,
sure
it's been a
appreciate it
pleasure.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck
Great
y'all.
to talk with you.
We've learned a little bit about public relations and about public speaking, too, from a man who dealt with senior executives in General Motors and the Delphi Motor Corporation. So meet us here every Wednesday night from 6 till 7 for the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap, or come down and see us live on Wednesday mornings from 9 till 10 at our Gillespie Group storefront studio. It's right on Michigan Avenue across from the baseball stadium. And when we wrap up this program, which we're doing now, thank you to Craig Godfrey, Godfrey Weisberg, CPAs and Advisors, Mary Stucco, Farm Bureau Insurance, Scott Farragon, Cartridge World, and George Volman from Volman Ford, the founder of this show. Closes it out, Suzanne Heward from Spotlight Marketing by saying,
That's a wrap.